Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining the GDI Consulting's OASIS Plus Unrestricted webinar. My name is Muge Carsley, and I have with me my colleague, Ab Vand. We are both self-scoring subject matter experts at GDI Consulting, and we are going to take you through the scoring system, optimization, and compliance as it relates to the OASIS Plus Unrestricted RFP. Just quick administrative notes. We are recording this webinar, and the link to the recording will be sent to you within 24 hours. We will hold a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to send your questions during the webinar using the chat system at the right of your window, and we will address them at that time. Also, you can download this presentation by clicking the link right under the file feature, the right-hand side of the panel of your window. Just a little bit information on who we are. We bring more than a decade of solid performance, providing high-quality proposals, captures for a lot of our customers. As you can see, we have a very high win rate, and we have, in 2021, had 143 wins. We support all procurement efforts from the Department of Defense, any of the DoD components, and other federal agencies. Our experience on self-scoring is solid. We have had many self-scoring proposals, GWACs, that we have supported our customers with and have successful awards. We've had 12 wins on the OASIS Unrestricted and 41 on the small business set-aside ones. On the ASTRO GWACs, we've had 18 wins on the emerging and large and 29 for the small businesses. We've had a win on the unrestricted HCATs, as well as 8 wins on the small business. Also wins on Alliance. We are very proud to boast that we have a win rate of 96% on GWACs with self-scoring proposals. So we do have self-scoring training for APMP chapters and other clients. Our clients do range from very small companies that we have also helped partner with larger companies and stronger companies, and to some of the largest defense contractors today, the top 10 in the market. We are experts in maximizing your score and, most importantly, ensuring compliance. Just our agenda. Again, I'm going to start off with a short intro to the self-scoring systems. We're going to go right over to the main information on the OASIS Plus Unrestricted 101. Ab is going to give you detailed information on the scoring system, and then I'll take over and do the score optimization, how we ensure compliance, and with time permitting, we will answer as many questions as we can. So just on the self-scoring systems, basically we recommend that you assess yourself right now based on the rules that are already put out in the RFP. Look at all your projects, fill out the self-scoring spreadsheet. You can do that online on Symphony, or you can create your own self-scoring matrix, or use the one that's provided to you with the draft RFP documents. You must substantiate your claims by providing the needed documents so that they're properly organized, properly highlighted, and those documents, of course, as you know, are the statement of work documents, the signed contract award documents, the FPDS reports, etc. These are more administrative in nature. When I say the response, there's really going to be no technical proposal written at all. It's all about getting your documents together, highlighting it, and making sure that they are presented in a way that it's all substantiated where you will get your scoring properly. Once the government reviews and receives and reviews your proposal, the first thing they're going to do is check for compliance, especially when there's going to be a huge demand, a lot of RFP or proposal responses that are going to be submitted. So compliance is key, and we want to make sure that, or you want to make sure that your proposal is not removed because of a simple technicality or there was something that was an oversight. Substantiations, the documentation is key, as we mentioned. So the awards are usually made to those companies whose scores are over the minimum threshold. So 50 is the unrestricted score. You want to definitely maximize your scoring. This, again, is a GSA multiple award GWAC. Estimated value is 60 billion. Minimum number of awards are unlimited. They did provide a current draft RFP, but the number that you see there was issued on the 15th of November. Any comments and questions you have at this time, it will be due to be submitted to the GSA by December 31st. They expect the RFP to be issued sometime in January, February timeframe, and possibly an award in September. The tracks that are being solicited right now are unrestricted. Total small business, 8A, hub zone, service disabled, veteran-owned, and woman-owned small business. We have 8 domains. So those are management and advisory, technical and engineering, research and development, intelligence services, enterprise solutions, environmental, facilities, and logistics, along with additional functional areas for integrated services that range from financial, human capital, marketing and public relations, social services, business administration, IT services, security and protection services, transportation, and medical services. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ab, who will walk you through the scoring system.
Thank you, Muge. Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending the webinar. We have lots to cover today, so I will be going over things a little bit faster than usual. You can always download the slides later on and look at the fine details that are on the slides. Also, if at the end we are not able to answer all the questions, be assured that we will go through all the questions that you put up on the chat system and respond to you by email later on. So let's start the main topic, which is the scoring system. As Muge mentioned, the maximum score for all domains is 50, but there is a minimum qualification score, which is 42 for all domains. And we are talking, everything we're discussing in this webinar is unrestricted. So the numbers are related to unrestricted, even though those numbers are, again, subject to change by the government. But right now, this is the situation. 42 is the minimum that you need to have, except for enterprise solutions, which is 45. Now, note that for OASIS Plus, unlike the previous types of self-scoring, there's no competition involved. In other words, if you get 42 and above, you are on it. You are awarded. Obviously, I mean being compliant and all the other administrative documents in place. But in terms of the score, if you get 42 or above it, you will be awarded. Now, the key players for getting that score are the 5 what they call QPs or qualifying projects. They cover, depending on the domain, between 35 to 43 points out of the 50, which is around 70% to 86% of the total score. So the next slide I'll show you in comparison of the total QP score, which is shown in blue, and the other parts of the RFP that you get scores for. You can see that the 5 QPs that you will use are the critical items that you should focus on. And one thing that all companies should consider is that the orange one is called total federal experience. As you can see, it's very negligible compared to the QPs. So even if your company has done only commercial work, but in terms of being able to get the scores for QPs, you're good to go. So what I want to emphasize here is that when preparing your proposal, when optimizing, when working on your score, your focus should be on those QPs. And then later on just optimize using the other two factors. So there are three general factors, the QPs, federal experience, which is orange, and the systems certifications and clearances, which is shown in gray here. Now, I'm going to cover each of those areas separately. So next, we're going to see what factors give you score for QPs. So we're going to discuss the 5 projects, the 5 qualifying projects. There are 6 factors with regards to the QPs that create the score for the 5 QPs: relevance, scale, integrated experience, specialized functional experience, management and staffing, and past performance. And in the next slides, we're going to cover each of these and see how you get scores for them. So as a comparison, if you look at this, this is all the 8 domains. And here we are looking at the 6 factors that make up the QP scoring system. You can see that in almost all of them, except for perhaps Intel, you get between 15 to 20 points for relevance. So relevance is one of the most important factors, and I'm going to delve into that. But this gives you an idea of the weight of each of these factors compared to each other and throughout the different domains. Now, I'm going to go into these 6 factors. Actually, there are 8, but 2 of them are specific to enterprise solutions. So I'll get to those as well. So we're going to discuss the 6 factors that create or make up your QP score. First factor is relevance. Okay, relevance means, and you can see the number of scores that you can get for different domains. Most of them are 20, which is the highest score, 20 out of 50. That's the big one. For Intel, it's 10, and for enterprise solutions, it's 16. Now, you need, or you don't need, but best to get the score is to have 5 contracts because each contract gets 4 points if you can prove that it is relevant. And I'm going to go into what the relevance means. So 5 times 4 is 20. For Intel, you get 2 points for each contract. So 5 times 2 is 10. And for enterprise solutions, you get 4 points. So 5 times, For enterprise solutions, you can provide 4 contracts, and 4 times 4 is 16. Now let's see what are the requirements to get these points. First of all, you need to have 5 contracts and 4 for enterprise solutions. Now these contracts can be standalone task orders under an MA, multiple award, IDIQ, single award, IDIQ, BPA, FSS, or BOA. You can also use one of the 5 can be a combination of task orders. So you might have a contract, a single award IDIQ with, say, 10 small task orders. You can combine them as one contract and use that, but only once you can do this out of the 5 QPs that you have. Now, these contracts can be federal prime contracts. Then they can be federal subcontractor contracts. So if you were a subcontractor to a federal prime, that's acceptable. And they can be commercial. So you can use just commercial, non-federal contracts. Contracts must have an annual value as spelled out above. And above, you can see the annual value. So, for example, for T&E, it's $1 million. And you can see the same, except for enterprise solutions, which is 50 million annual value. The others are around 1 million to, and facilities is $500,000. Now, what does annual value mean? There are 2 types, 2 ways of calculating it. If the contract is active and ongoing, then you take everything from the contract. So if the contract says it's a 5-year contract, that's the duration. And if it says the value of the contract during these 5 years will be, say, $20 million, then you divide the $20 million by 5 years, and then that's the annual value. So everything is contractual, even though you might be in the, say, 7-month or second year of the contract, you still use the contract as a 5-year contract with the full amount that's on the contract. If it's a completed contract, so it was completed, say, a year ago, whatever, the way you calculate the annual value is you take the obligated amount for the entire contract, so what you were paid, and divide it by the actual performance duration. So here it's actual if it's completed, but if it's ongoing, it's contractual. Now, if it's ongoing, one of the requirements is that it has to have at least 6 months of completed performance. So you can't use a contract that you got 2 months ago. It has to be at least 6 months old and being performed. And if it's a completed contract, the date of completion must be within the last 5 years. Within the last 5 years, the ending date is the date proposals are due, which is unknown right now. But when they announce that, subtract 5 years from that, and the completion date, remember, not the start date, but the completion date must be within that 5-year range. And then last requirement is that to be relevant, you can't have an associated record of negative past performance. It has to be above satisfactory. So, and when I say that, it means that the average of all the factors, because when the government usually prepares a past performance report, they grade you on different items, like how you use your small business management in terms of timing, in terms of performance, all of that. It doesn't matter if one of those is below average, but the average of all those items together must be above average, above 3. If you know, they give a numbering system, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the average of your record should be above 3. Remember, it cannot be 3. This is the catch. So if you got satisfactory on all items, your average would be 3. That's not acceptable. It has to be 3.1 or something above that. So remember that. Now, this is relevance. So you get 20 points in most cases if you can provide 5 contracts with those requirements. Let's move on. Now, the other thing that gives you a score is scale. Scale means what the value of the contract was, and also how many FTEs were used, full-time employees. You can see that in most cases, you get 6 or 5 points out of this. Now, the way you calculate it is this. First credit, let's take the example of, for example, M&A. You get 6 points for 5 contracts. So how do you calculate that? If the contract, the annual value is over 2.5 million, or, remember this is an or more than 12 FTEs were used, then you get a point for that specific QP, for that qualifying project. So assuming that all your qualifying projects do have that requirement, you get 5 points overall. 5 projects, each of them have that. Okay, so you get 5 points. Now, you get a second point for each contract if it's over $10 million annually, or you use 50 or more FTEs. So you get a second point. Remember that you say you have 56 FTEs. You get 1 point first because there are over 12 FTEs, and then you get a second point, so 2 points, because there are over 50 FTEs. So that's how you calculate your score. So you might come up with this question, assuming that I have 5 contracts and they all have, say, over 50 FTEs, or they're all over 10 million. The value that would be 5 times 2, which would give you a 10-point score. But the maximum is 6. So even though you might get 10 in terms of calculations, you cannot claim more than 6. So remember that. Now, the point I wanted to mention is that even though you might say you have 5 contracts and one of them, for any reason, is not relevant, as in the previous slide. When I say it's not relevant, it means that, for example, the value is not what the annual value should be. Or perhaps you don't have a good past performance. That's fine. You don't get the point for relevance. But here, if you use that same project, you might get the credit for scale. Remember that you can't change the 5 QPs. So you will say, hey, these are the 5 QPs I have, but 4 of them are relevant. But the 5th one is not relevant, but it will give me a point for scale. So it's really important how you choose those 5 QPs to maximize your score. Because you might go for, say, 5 contracts that all give you score for relevance, but if they're very weak in the other factors that we are going through, including scale, you might get a less total score out of it. So it's a combination of all of these. And so I wanted to, underline this factor. Okay, let's move to the next factor, which is integrated experience. You can see that there are 3 items involved. Labor categories over 5 in most cases will give you score. Functional areas, as mentioned by Muge in the previous slides, these are the functional areas that if you can show that your contract, that QP had 3 or more of those, and in some cases 4 or 5, like in enterprise solutions or facilities, and environmental, which is 5. If you can show that the QP had more than these functional areas, then you get a 1-point score. Now, for facilities only, if you can show that you had 3 or more subcontractors, you get a score 2. Now, the thing that you should consider is that this is not and, this is or. So whether you had more than 5 labor categories or more than 3 functional areas, or in case of facilities, more than 3 subcontractors, you get a point. You don't have to have all of them to get a point. So any of these, you get a point. But again, you might have 5 contracts and you might get 5 points out of all of them, but the total is what is written here. So even you deserve 5, if the total for, say, for example, M&A is 3, you're not going to get more than 3, and you should not claim for more than 3. Again, the same explanation that I presented with regards to relevant and non-relevant QPs. You have 2 types of QPs. Relevant were those that had the requirements in the relevance slide. Non-relevant ones you can use here, but you just don't get the score. So again, you can use non-relevant QPs here and get score if need be. Okay, next one, specialized functional experience. This is only for 3 of the domains: facilities, environmental, and logistics. And you can see the points you get. Each QP receives 1 point, for example, if it covers 3 or more of the below. So you can see I'm reading off of facilities. If you can show that your QP had 3 or more of building management services, electrical maintenance, HVAC maintenance, janitorial, landscaping, ground maintenance, plumbing, and pipe fitting, 3 of these, you get 1 point. So the maximum is 5. Now for environmental, the QP receives the credit if it covers any of those mentioned: remediation, the hazardous waste, climate change policy, environmental permitting, and the others. And you get 1 credit for each of those. Now, for logistics, again, you have, if the QP covered a surge capability and or contingency and exercise support, which includes evidence of using SPOT and or SOFA, you get a point there. So these are the different things that you can get scores for: facilities, environmental, and logistics. And we'll jump to the next one. Okay, management and staffing. So this is a big one, especially for Intel, because you get 19 points for that. For the others, it's either 5 or less. Now, the points you get are divided between 3 items. And again, it's an or here. So any of these you have, you get the score. One is search capability. So if you can show that the QP covered search capability, and they mentioned that search capability means 10% level of effort increase within 45 days lead time. That means search capability. And you have to also show that the government requested that search, not that you were behind schedule and you had to bring in more staff and things like that. The government must have requested that search, and then you can get a score for it. Or if you can show that 5 or more first-tier subcontractors were used. For enterprise solutions, it's 8 or more. For facilities, it's 2 or more, and for environmental, it's 3 or more. The others are 5 or more. So if you can show that you had 5 or more first-tier subs in that QP, you get the score for it. And then third one is 5 or more personnel with clearances. So if you can show that the personnel that you use, 5 of them at least, had clearances, and clearances here means secret, top secret, and Q for DOE. If you can show that, then you get a score there. So that's how you get a score. Any of these, you get 1 per QP. Now, in addition to that, Intel gets 14 more points for Intel. It's if you have 5 relevant projects that you can use, that you can show that they had 5 or more personnel with clearance. For Intel, you get 3 points for them. So in addition to the score that you get for search capability or first-tier subcontractor, you get 15 points also, 5 times 3, if you can show that each QP had 5 or more personnel with clearances. So that it comes to 19 points. Now, facilities has some special requirements that I'm going to cover in the next slide. Just remember that, again, this management and staffing, the QPs here do not have to be relevant QPs, as in the first relevant slide. They can be non-relevant QPs. But overall, I just want to make, I'm going to repeat this. You select your QPs. You can't change the QPs throughout. So you have 5 fixed QPs, but some of them might be relevant and some might not be relevant. That's just the scoring system. Okay. And for facilities, they have another, under the management and staffing, they have the type of work. So you can get 2 points for up to 4 QPs for showing that urgent work request response, emergency work request response, and emergency callback. And they're explaining what they mean by that. You can get 2 points for those based on the QPs. So 2 of the QPs, if you can show that they had these, any of them, not all of them, any of them, you get the score. So 2 more points for facilities. And then for enterprise solutions, they have something called multiple locations. You get 4 points for that. You receive 1 credit per QP if you can show that at least it covered 3 or more locations. And here it means 3 or more locations within US. It doesn't have to be OCONUS. So just 3 different locations in US, you get 1 point. You receive 1 additional credit for each QP that demonstrates performance in 5 or more different locations. So if you have a QP that was that covers 5 or 6 or 7 locations, you get 1 point here and 1 point previously for 3 different locations, so 2 points overall. And then you receive 1 additional credit for each QP that demonstrates performance that involves work at an OCONUS location. So if it's outside US continental, and outside US continental, at least previously meant that Hawaii and Alaska were not covered. So those are considered OCONUS. And then each QP can only achieve 2 credits max. So here overall for enterprise solutions, you can get 4 points. Lastly, past performance. It has 2 sections, your past performance and also how the past performance of managing small businesses was. Here it's covering just your past performance. So you receive 1 credit for 3 or more relevant QPs. Here, unlike the other ones, you cannot use non-relevant QPs. So you're getting score only for relevant QPs. And relevant, I hope you remember, was, first of all, it had to be above that annual threshold value. It had to be older than 6 months if it's ongoing, finished within the last 5 years, and then that's essentially what the relevant QPs were. So here, if you have 3 or more relevant QPs, you get 1 point. You get 2 points if 4 QPs are relevant, and then you get 3 if all 5 are relevant. So this is how you get 3 points for this. Again, remember that non-relevant, if you're using a non-relevant QP, you get no score for that. Now, they also, under the unrestricted track, you get 1 point for small business utilization. So you receive 1 credit for past performance across QPs if it shows an average rating of very good or above. So that's 4 out of 5 of small business subcontracting rating elements. So if you can show that all QPs had a very good or above for small business subcontracting, you get 1 point. If you as the entity performing project were a small business previously at the time of the award of the project, that project doesn't factor into the overall average rating. And finally, if all QPs were performed as a small business concern, so you were a small business at that time, you can claim credit for this element. So if you were a small business at the time of performing those 5 QPs, you automatically get that 1 point. So that's the end of the first factor, which was the QPs. That made the main part of the score for this RFP. But there are 2 other factors involved. One is called federal experience, and the other one was system certification. So here I'm going to cover federal experience factors. As you can see, there are 5 of them. Breadth, MA IDIQ, that's multiple award IDIQs, how many you participated in. Federal agencies, how many federal agencies do your projects cover. Cost reimbursement and advanced R&D. This is for R&D domain only, the last 2. The cost reimburse and advanced R&D is for them. Now, one thing I want to make it very clear here. Here, the projects that you show to get the scores do not have to be your QPs. So you can actually introduce new projects here. So this is completely separate from your QP section. But at the same time, these must be all federal prime contracts. So you can't use any subcontract projects here. No commercial projects, just federal prime contracts. But as I said, they don't have to be the 5 QPs. They could be, or you can actually introduce new contracts. Okay, let's delve into this. Breadth. What does breadth mean? You'll get 2 points for 4 of these domains: T&E, M&A, R&D, and logistics. You receive 1 credit if you can provide projects spanning 3 or more NAICS codes or PSC designated as applicable to the domain. So if you can show that 3 of the projects, each of the projects that you provide covered 3 or more NAICS codes or PSCs that are related to your domain, you get 1 point for it. You receive a 2nd point if you can show that the QP covered 5 or more NAICS codes. Note that for these projects, the NAICS code or PSC must represent the principal purpose, and only one of may be claimed per project. So you can't, the NAICS code that is written on the contract or on FPDS, that's the one that counts, or the PSC. Number 4 explains what I said, that you don't have to use the QP projects. And there is a requirement if you're not using the QP projects, when you're introducing new projects, there is a requirement, 3 of them. 1, prime, the contracts must be prime federal service contracts. Secondly, they must have an annual value of 500,000 K. It's nearly half the 1 million, which is for most domains. So the annual value must be over 500,000 K, and they must be ongoing for 6 months or completed within the last 5 years. So this is the requirement for the new projects that you introduce. Okay, going to MA IDIQ participation. They want to know how many multiple award contracts, task orders you receive. So, and you can see the score that you get. They don't need to be, obviously, again, the same requirement. They don't need to be the 5 QPs. You can introduce new contracts, up to 4 of them. You receive credit for task orders under multiple award IDIQs. Remember, you cannot use single award IDIQ task orders, but it must be multiple award, and at least 2 companies, yourself or plus another one, participated in it. So it wasn't a sole source sort of type. So the requirement would be the task orders must be prime federal service contracts based on TOs on a MA IDIQ, annual value of 500,000 K, and be ongoing for 6 months or completed within the last 5 years. Right now, the RFP, the wording, the language does not prohibit you from using multiple TOs under the same IDIQ. So you might have one IDIQ with 4 task orders that comply with all the requirements I mentioned. You get the 4 points. At least right now. They might change that in the later corrections to the RFP. For R&D, Intel, and environmental domains, you can use up to 3 projects and get a maximum of 3 points. For ENT domain, 2 projects, and for logistics, 1 project. Okay, next is federal agencies. They want to know if you have worked with 3 or more federal agencies, and you get a point for that. And when they say federal agency, it means the funding agency, whose ID is on the FPDS report. Sometimes there is a funding agency, and it's different from the using agency, the ordering agency. Here, when you want to quote, you have to use the funding agency, whose ID is on the FPDS report. The projects that you're presenting here, obviously 3 of them. They don't have to be the QPs, but they have to be prime federal service contracts, annual value of 500K, and then be ongoing for 6 months or completed within the last 5 years. And remember, sometimes IDIQs, BPAs, and that sort of thing have a minimum guarantee. They are not going to accept that minimum guarantee as a task order. You have to have received a real task order if it's under an IDIQ. Okay, next would be additional for R&D. For R&D, there are 2 other factors that give you score. 2 for cost reimbursement, and 2 for advanced R&D. For cost reimbursement, you can provide 2 contracts. Again, they don't have to be QPs, and you get 1 credit for each of them if you can show that it was a cost reimbursement type. For advanced R&D, again, 2 contracts, and you can get score for that. Advanced R&D is explained as R&D effort performed under the SBIR or STTR programs under phase 2 and phase 3, applied research and experimental, exploratory, advanced development. And the PSC there would start with an A, the first position, and 4th position would be 2 or 3. That would be the type. Or project with an assessed technology readiness level, TRL, which must be 3 or higher. Any of these, you're good to go, you get the score. And again, the requirement, prime federal service contracts, annual value of $500K, and ongoing for 6 months or completed within the last 5 years. Okay, for the third factor involving the total scoring, which is systems, clearances, certifications, and factors, you can see that most of the domains you get maximum 5, some less. Only Intel and Enterprise Solutions you get a little bit more, and you can see the difference and the comparison of these items. Now, because of the time factor that we don't have, I'm going to skip over explaining the details of these. But as I mentioned, if you focus on the QPs, which are the most important, this is what you already have or can get. It's just the importance of compliance that you have to get to make sure that you get the scores for these. Okay, Muge, can you take over from here?
I will take. Thank you so much for that great detailed explanation for the team listening in. So score optimization, very important. Must read the RFP carefully and also pay attention to any upcoming Q&As to understand some of the questions and how they respond to them. Do not read the old OASIS or do not look at any of the old Q&As because they're not going to be helpful or it's just going to confuse you or mislead you. So as I mentioned, concentrate on maximizing your score on the 5 qualifying projects, which will provide you the majority of the scoring, at least up to 80% of the scoring. Don't forget to use your commercial projects to maximize your score if possible. If you have multiple contracts, use a per contract scoring system and assessment, such as a self-scoring matrix, which I'll show you on the next slide, to understand which contracts to use for the QP and which ones to use for the other areas. Do take advantage of partnering, CTA2, which is like a prime subcontractor relationship. You can help multiple partners to boost your score. And of course, outsource your proposal preparation, your reviews, so that you can get professional eyes on it, just to go through the material you've prepared and to make sure that you're maximizing your score. This is the assessment score checklist. Ab had mentioned how we calculate the annual scores. So for any upcoming project or the projects that are currently active, you take the overall value, you divide it by the period of performance, and you make sure you're above the minimum threshold when you divide it up. In a case where you might have, 2-year performance and the contract is 1.8 million, when you divide it up, if you're under the 1 million requirement, you're a little bit short, 932, that contract is not going to work. You definitely want to just look at your scoring. And then you can update using your checklist right here for scale, etc.
One point I just wanted to make.
Yes, of course. I'll come back. Here we go.
If you look at this column here, what it is that it shows the total score that each contract can get independently. This way, even though it might be a small contract, it will give you an idea whether you should use that instead of a large contract. For example, look at this this one, $14,981,000. So the value seems very high, but the overall score that you get is just 7. So these are misleading factors that, for example, the value of the annual revenue or the value of the contract might be high. So let's pick that one. So we use this checklist not only to make sure that we are compliant in terms of the relevance and all that, also to compare different contracts with each other, and then decide which 5 to pick for QP, which 5 will give me the highest score out of all these. So that I wanted to explain. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. On to compliance. We had an initial webinar also and discussed what can go wrong. So some of the most common compliance issues, misunderstanding the requirement and the consequences, including overscoring yourself. Contracts that you use as QP may not be entirely relevant, so problems with the annual value calculations, performance ratings, or just irrelevant content that doesn't qualify for the QP or for the domain, or the minimal values. Incomplete substantiation in general, and contracts not having proper signatures, NAICS codes, PSCs, contracts not showing proper relevance, and not submitting the proposal correctly in Symphony. Symphony is also very helpful now. They do provide tutorials for anybody who was already registered can go in and watch to understand how to upload. To prevent some of these compliance issues, definitely read the RFP and all the Q&As thoroughly multiple times. Create a reliable compliance checklist. Do at least 2 rounds of compliance checks when you are finished with the scoring. Attention to detail is absolutely vital. Check every single line item per the RFP sections L and M multiple times to ensure you're compliant. Discuss compliance with the team. Be the devil's advocate. Always assume that you've missed something. Go for 3 to 5 points above the minimum threshold. 42 for most domains, but we always recommend to go 3 to 5 points above to ensure that you're awarded even if you miss something. Utilize a third party to review your scoring and your proposal documents to have another set of eyes to check your work. As I mentioned, prepare a checklist. So this is like a checklist that was prepared for the previous OASIS. You do everything from your section L references, the type of document that's going to be needed, where is the template that's to be used, or the J reference, if you will, template that's to be used. If there's the naming conventions, you place it here. You use a coloring method, and then you put your notes right here. This is always very helpful and always to have with you as you're uploading as well.
One point I wanted to mention, Muge, as you can see, some items are red, and this was at the end of the first review. So you can always see the coloring might not be very clear, but some items, when say OK, are in green. The red ones are issues that need to be taken care of. So at the end of a first review, you always know where you stand, what problems in red are, and the orange is for the item itself. These items need to be taken care of for the second review. And this way, you have a sound system to check each and every section, L&M items for each document to make sure that nothing is missed. Okay.
Thank you. How can we help you? The services we can provide, we can do a free consultation. We can do a pre-qualification assessment to look at your documents and give you an assessment, again, using a checklist and a scoring method. We can support you with the full proposal development with a dedicated proposal team. We will do the scoring assessment and optimization, basically full proposal assemble, cradle to grave, full and multiple compliance checks, and helping you upload to Symphony. We could do reviews and audits. We can provide you the 2 rounds of compliance checks, score optimization checks, again, uploading to Symphony. This is our contact information for any technical. Abvant is our technical lead, subject matter expert. For sales and any support you need, you can contact Merlin Freedy. His email and phone number is here, and it's also on the slides. So if you ever need any help, please do reach out to us. And with that, we can have a little bit of time for some Q&As. Anything we'll try to get through within the next 10 minutes. If not, we will take your Q&As that we could not get to. We will respond to you with answers to all the questions that you have posted here. I will start with the first question. Missed out on the small business presentation. Do we have a recording? Yes, we do. And we have slides, which we will also send out to you. Can we use a subs past performance for the QPs? Yes. You can bring in a CTA2, what we call a subcontract prime sub relationship. And you can use, and we mentioned throughout the slides, definitely partner, bring in subcontractors to boost your Q points. Can you elaborate on the federal experience, breadth, and where is this listed in the draft RFP? It's volume 3, section L.5.3, I'm pretty sure. That's where it explains to you the federal, the 3 different NAICS codes. It tells you about the multiple award IDIQ experience, etc. Question regarding it looks like they were streamlining NAICS codes. Don't most FPDS contracts list just one NAICS code? How can we prove more than one NAICS code for a project? Each project contract, federal contract, only gets assigned one NAICS code. Now, if you think that, for example, T&E, you want to go after that domain, and you did work that's close to the 541990, I believe is the NAICS code, what you're going to do is you're going to use the JP3 form to prove, or as your verification to substantiate that NAICS code. That JP3 form is going to be completed, sent to your contracting officer, who's going to sign off. So instead of the FPDS report to substantiate that NAICS code, you're going to use the completed and signed JP3 form. Next question is the same. Can we use subcontractors' past performance to claim SIBRs or other factors? Yes, again, you can use subcontractor past performance. OTAs and SIBRs also do count as contract, but their dollar values may not be as what's required in the unrestricted. Do you have different packages in regard to consulting for a company, just like offering reviews? Yes, absolutely. Please do reach out and we can give you more information on our services and how we can help you. Is GDIC able to help with teaming if our company falls short of our threshold? Absolutely reach out. You might consider maybe we do a pre-assessment and then we can introduce you to other companies. We've done that for small businesses before, yes. I am not seeing an FEP breadth on the scoring matrix on the JP9. So this JP9 is there. It is under L531, L532. You may want to look at those. Yeah, it says, can company prime and also sub at the same time? If it's for the same domain, yes, you just cannot use the same QPs that you have provided as a prime to the sub. You can use the same QP across multiple domains, but you cannot use it for the same domain. Also in the small business, if you're bidding as a small business, you can use the same QP at the same time if you're bidding a hub zone. All right.
Yeah, I have a few questions too. I have received. Let me read them for you.
Yes.
Says that I read the RFP as award will be one contract with domains as CLINs versus OASIS, which is different contract for each pool. Is that accurate?
As award will be one contract within domain as CLINs versus for each pool. I'm not sure I understand the question, but the CLINs are not going to come into play until after award, so there's no labor, contract line item pricing or anything like that. But yes, if you submit a bid for each domain that you qualify for, you will receive an award for that domain as long as you meet the minimum threshold or the points needed. Is that how you understand it, that question?
I think so. It's a little bit ambiguous, but essentially there are 8 domains, so 8 different contracts there, and in each domain you get, I think, 6 different types of companies, from unrestricted all the way to small business. And so if you multiply those, you get 48 different types of contracts that will be awarded. So that's another way of answering this question, I think.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, another question is, what is the anticipated structure for Volume 3, given that this is also documentation?
So as I pointed out, the federal experience does not have to be one of your QPs. So depending on the domain, you can have 3 additional projects with the minimum dollar values for that domain. Some of them can be 4 additional. So you just have to look at the domain, and the structure is the same. We still have to highlight and put the documents together to verify the NAICS, the value, the funding agency, etc.
Right. Another question: can you discuss the new greenhouse gas protocols point-related requirements released in the last DRFP? This was a point change across all domains.
Yes, they provided, we expect to get a lot of questions regarding that. They provided a document to be completed for that as well. So if the intent award will be different contract for each domain, so that's fine. I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong point. It is a change. They did not have this the first time around. There are certain contracts that require for you to report greenhouse emissions. So there is a form that'll be filled out for that. And as the new RFP, the official one, is released, we'll get more information and clarification as to what they want you to provide. But usually, yes, every government contract not every, but some of them do have that greenhouse emissions reporting. So that's going to be something that's going to be required to be submitted.
Okay, some more questions received right now. Can companies prime and also sub at the same time?
Yes, and I think we mentioned that before. As long as, if it's in the same domain, you cannot use the same QP. If it's across domains, you can use the same QP. You just have to be careful because they will eliminate one to be considered from the QP calculation.
Right, and also if you're participating as different types of entities, for example, if you're participating as 8A, you can use the same contract and then same QP in the same domain compared to, say, if you're participating as small business. So same QP can be used as small business and as 8A for the same domain. But inside the same domain and with the same type of company, you cannot use them. Another question, what was the combination definition that one QP under relevance, from the one QP under relevance?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Could you read that to me one more time?
What was the combination definition from the one QP under relevance? I don't understand it either.
Well, the relevance has the dollar value. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the definition of that we provided up for relevance. What is required to be relevant? So it had the dollar values, the NAICS codes, etc.
Right, dollar value, also period of performance in terms of being the last 5 years or 6 months ongoing, and then the next codes.
And if you refer back to these slides, specifically where we have laid out what is the relevance and what counts and what are the points across the domains for relevance, and we went back through every single point calculation, it'll be very helpful when you're calculating your points. It can be very confusing, so we try to really simplify it for you. I think the slides will be very helpful. And of course, if you have any questions, if you need any help and reaching out to us to help you with the assessment, feel free to do so. We'd be happy to do that.
So a few more questions remain, but we are out of time. So I'd like to thank everyone for participating, and we look forward to seeing you in our future webinars as well.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.